What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Two-Wheeled Rider YouTube channel. My name is Mario Orsini, and in today's video, I'm going to review the all-new for 2022 Husqvarna Norden 901. So huge shout out to my buddy Pete Moravec for loaning me out his brand new bike. Got to ride it some last weekend, gonna do a little bit more riding this weekend, but that was the only way I get my hands on one, so thanks, Pete. So I'm gonna hit you up with all of the specs like I've done in all of my review videos, then I'm gonna show you all the features, and then I'm gonna let you know what it's like to ride the bike. So starting out with the first thing, here in the United States, this bike lists base price $13,999. We're gonna start out with the engine. We've got an 889cc dual overhead cam, 8-valve, liquid cooled, electronically fuel injected parallel twin with a pair of balance shafts. The horsepower comes in at 105, while the torque comes in at 74 foot-pounds of torque. I'm gonna list all the specs over here, and I'm probably gonna flip back and forth between millimeters and, regular old English stuff, but I will have the conversion over there for you as we go along. Another cool thing about the bike, we have 3 ride modes because it is ride-by-wire. We've got street, we've got off-road, we also have a rain mode. There is an optional Explorer mode. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to test that because that has not been unlocked in the United States as of today's date. Another nice thing about this engine that I'll touch on later, the service intervals are 15,000 kilometers apart, so not a whole lot of maintenance to do on the bike on the daily. Next up, let's head to the rest of the drivetrain. We have a 6-speed manual transmission, obviously manual, with a cable actuated slipper clutch with quick shift up and down, and that is going back to a final drive of chain drive. Let's move up to the front of the bike where we have a 43 millimeter upside down WP Apex front fork with 220 millimeters of suspension travel, and it is fully adjustable. Also connected onto the front fork, we have a non-adjustable steering damper. While staying on the front of the bike, we have a 21-inch spoked rim. It is tubeless. Coming from the factory, we have the Pirelli Scorpion Rally STR tires. All right, staying on the front of the bike, let's touch on the braking. We have Husqvarna branded J1 braking up front. We do have stainless steel braided brake lines. They are hydraulic brakes. We've got twin 4-piston calipers mounted on floating 320 millimeter discs. And then finally up front, and this goes for the back too, we have the Bosch 9.1 ABS system, which provides ABS front and rear, as well as cornering ABS. Moving on to the rear of the bike, let's take a look at that rear suspension. We have a WP Apex shock on the back of the bike, full adjustability with 215 millimeters of suspension travel. Also staying on the back of the bike, we have an 18-inch spoke rim, same style tubeless system, same Pirelli tires. And then we have a twin piston, again, stainless steel brake line, hydraulic brakes on the back, twin piston with ABS, mounted on a 260 millimeter disc. Those of you that have ridden KTMs, Husqvarnas, it should be expected. We do have a steel trellis frame that all of this stuff is mounted to. Let's touch on a couple of additional specs before we move on and show you some features. So I'm sure a lot of you are wondering about the seat height because it is an adventure bike. And I told you, I'm gonna flip back and forth between millimeters and inches. I'm sorry, but it starts out at a 33.6-inch seat height, but it is an adjustable seat from the factory. That is in the low position. If we move it to the upper position, we're now up a little bit higher at 34.4-inch seat height. For those of you vertically challenged, there is a low seat you can buy as a factory option or power part, whatever Husqvarna calls it. So if you need a little bit lower, you can go a little bit lower. So because it's an adventure bike, we expect a decent amount of ground clearance. We've got 252 millimeters or 9.9 inches of ground clearance underneath the bike to get you over those obstacles off-road. When it comes to fuel capacity, we've got 19 liters or roughly 5 gallons. That's enough to easily get you well over the 200-mile range before you've got to stop for fill-ups. A couple last things, the dry weight of the motorcycle comes in at 204 kilograms or roughly 450 pounds. And then the last thing I want to touch on spec-wise, I kind of mentioned those maintenance intervals. It's 15,000 kilometers between oil changes and then 30,000 kilometers, just like their big V twin bikes, between the large service interval, which there's obviously more than just this, but typically we're talking about spark plugs, valve checks, those sorts of things. So those are the specs on the motorcycle. Now let's show you some of the features. All right, so starting out with features, let me show you my favorite feature. It's got a key instead of a key fob. Look how amazing it works. Flip the switch on, and now we're going to take a look at this TFT display. Obviously the side stands down right now, that's great to know. But if we flip the bike up, we can get a look at everything here on the TFT display. Now I've ridden this in bright sunlight. It's fairly easy to read. I haven't noticed any time where I've had any problems reading it because it is a TFT display. So there's a lot of data on here. You can obviously see you've got all your trip information over here. You've got your tachometer here. You've got your speed indicator here. You've got your gear indicator here. And we can also tell what ride modes we're in. So right now we can see that ABS is in off-road. We'll get into that in a second. The bike itself is in street mode, and motorcycle traction control is turned on. We also have a fuel indicator over here, which gives us our estimated range until empty. So if we come over here on the side, this is our toggle, much like every other KTM bike that's been made. And you can see that as I hit this up or down arrow, it's going to take us into different menus. So ABS mode, let's talk about it. This is kind of cool. You can see that right now on the screen, because we're in road ABS, both of the brake calipers are lit up green. That means we've got ABS on both. If we click down to off-road mode, that's going to kill the ABS on the rear. So in off-road situations, you know, that's probably something you're going to want, is to have off-road turned off, or, you know, ABS turned off on the rear. If we hit up on the pad, we can see our different ride modes. Now right now we're in street. If I hit down, we'll go into rain mode, and then one more will take us into off-road mode. It would be cool if we could show you Explorer mode, just not available at this point. Now, we can also come down here and go into bike info. We can see what the water temperature is, how the battery's doing, fuel range, odometer, service schedule, all kinds of data in here. When we tap back out, you got your trip information. You also have your settings, so you can set some favorite switches on here if you want. And it's a quick selector, so whatever favorite thing is you want to get, you can set. Also down here, we have a shift light, so after break-in, you can adjust your shift light, and then obviously you can change your clock and date on here. And then we also have our units, so whether you want, you know, regular old American units or something else, and you can also change the language. Now, we have heating. This bike does not come equipped with heated grips from the factory. That is an option, but if you install them, they're integrated into your TFT display, so you can control them from there. Also, if you want to get a heated seat, same sort of deal. You're going to pay extra for that, but it is something that is available if that's something you'd like to have on your motorcycle, and you can control it all through here, as you can see, with grips, rider seat, and pillion seat. So staying up here on the front of the bike, just want to show you the controls here on the left-hand side. Obviously you have your clutch, and if we take a close look, you can see it's cable actuated, so you want to keep that tension on there the way you like it. And within spec, I just showed you your selector here for your TFT. You have your turn signals, you got your horn button, and then right here, this bike is equipped with cruise control from the factory. Much like any other cruise you've used, you can set it, you can resume it, you can bump up the speed, you can drop down the speed. And then we also have, this is not just your high-low beam switch, though it will operate that way. If you want to flash your headlight, you can tap in there too if you're getting ready to pass somebody. Over here on the right-hand side of the bike, not a lot to see. You've got your starter and kill button, you've got your throttle, and then you have your wuss lever up here, also known as the front brake lever. That's about all we got over here. As we look here on the very front of the bike, we've got some cool things, and I'll show you here in a second. We do have some running lights installed from the factory that you can kick on. They'll stay on after you turn the bike off, and what I mean by that is they're not going to reset when you turn the switch off and turn it back on. They'll kick back on and default to wherever you had them. Over here on this side, we do have a power outlet, so if you want to plug in, you know, a cell phone charger or something like that, you have that option. Also up here, and watch for an upcoming Back in the Garage video, we already have a spot there to mount your GPS, though it will require a mount, so check out that video. But they did know that people are going to be traveling on these things, so give them a good spot to mount their GPS. Staying up here on the front of the bike, just a couple more things I want to show you. We mentioned the fully adjustable front fork. We've got compression over on this side, so you've got full adjustability there. and then we have rebound over on the right hand fork that is real easy to get to. So if you're going from an on-road condition to an off-road condition and you want to change up your settings, go right on ahead. The other thing, if you do need to adjust your front headlight, you know, where it's projecting out, you get this easy twist knob to, you know, lower it, raise it, whatever it is you need to do. Another thing I like about this bike, and I say this because some of the later 1290s are no longer coming with it, but on our shifter, we have a fold-in shifter, which is nice. Also, we have some decent foot pegs from the factory, but you may want something a little bit wider. Also, these rubber inserts do come out if you need some more traction off-road, but not a bad peg from the factory. As we move over to the other side of the bike, we can see we got a big, beefy pedal here for the brake, which is great because when you're riding off-road, you want to make sure you can be able to get to that. I read in the owner's manual that this is adjustable, so we've got a couple of different settings there. Haven't messed around with it, but according to the owner's manual, we can have some adjustability on that. All right, so moving back up here to the front of the bike, we do come with hand guards from the factory. These are plastic, so it might be something you want to upgrade. That said, I've been running the plastic ones on my 1290 for 5-6 years now without any issues, but if you do want to beef something up, that's probably worth looking into. Speaking of beefing things up, you're probably going to want a skid plate. This is real lightweight stuff down here. It's probably not going to take much of an impact. Husqvarna does have skid plates to fit. There are some aftermarket companies that got them, but if you're going to be doing some serious off-roading, I would recommend upgrading this to something a little bit heavier. Okay, so let's check out what's under the rear seat. For that, we'll use the key, much like we will for the gas cap or the ignition. Give a quick turn there, and let me show you what's back here. Okay, so this is obviously a two-piece seat, so we remove the passenger seat there. We'll just set that out of the way. Like I said, you know, this is an adjustable seat up front here for the rider. You've got a couple of different settings you can put it on. Something really cool I want to show you, because if you don't read your owner's manual, you probably wouldn't know this. So we mentioned we've got fully adjustable suspension. If you don't know where to put it, when you take your seat off, there is actually a sticker down here on the air box that tells you all the different settings, whether it's max payload, sport, standard, comfort. That's a really cool thing to have there, you know, just as a, so you don't have to remember it. And then while upside down right now, we obviously have a fuse panel under here, and all those things are labeled as well, so you know which fuses you're pulling. Okay, so also underneath the seat is your toolkit. So let's take a look, see what's inside there. We're probably going to be a little underwhelmed. We do have a tube here with a bunch of the Torx bits that you would need to remove body work from the bike. We've got a long Allen there. This is going to be your rear axle and probably front axle bolt remover. This is a cheater handle to give you more leverage, but obviously it breaks down. This is actually a really good tool. This is better than some of the aftermarket toolkits you can get because it provides you with so much leverage. It's pretty Spartan. We've got another Allen there. We do have, I don't know what's that, a 17mm socket. So then the last couple of things, we have this T-handle Allen. We've also got a couple of combo wrenches, and what I mean by combo is not box end, open end, like literally they're different on each side. You've got 10mm, 14mm, 8mm, and 13mm. Those are going to be the most common sizes of bolts you're going to be removing from this bike. For those that may not have, you know, ever taken a look at a 790, 890, or 901, you can see your battery's pretty easily accessible here. So if you did want to hook up battery tender leads, that would be very easy to get to. You don't have to take a lot off, literally just the seat, and you're right there with access. Now, while Pete's toolkit was just sitting right here from the dealership, there actually is a place to store this. Now, let me show you. Behind here and here are a couple of metal tabs that go into rubber grommets, but don't pull this off because back here is a slip-on piece that's going to slide this way. So if you pop it there and there, we can now slide this off, and you can kind of see where that slid back onto here. What's really neat is we pop this open, it gives us room here to put that toolkit in, and then that frees up a little bit of space under your seat. We also have that same option over here on this side. It's obviously not going to carry a lot of stuff, but it reminds me of a dirt bike, how the side panel pops off. But it is cool to have a little bit more storage space here on these two side panels. I know we're spending a lot of time on the front of the bike, but you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the adjustability of this handlebar. So we have it in the neutral position right now, and if we look down here, we can see there's a hole in the back. And if we come around to the front, there's another hole there. So we can mount it in the center, we can mount it in the back, and we can mount it in the front. that actually gives us 6 different mounting positions. I know that sounds like only 3, but these clamps are offset. So if we were to flip these around, that gives us a different offset. So you actually have 6 different mounting positions, not counting the ability to either roll the bars forward, bring the bars back, or even just change the bars out for that matter. But there is a lot of customization you can do to make the ergonomics fit you and or your riding style. So what you guys probably really want to know, what's it like to ride the Norden 901? Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, I did get the opportunity to ride it last weekend. I got to ride a little bit more this weekend as we were shooting the video. And the first weekend, the first thing I noticed getting on the bike were the ergonomics. I think within like 10 minutes of being on the bike, you know, I radioed back to Pete and I was like, hey, this is a great bike for you, because this is one of those bikes that obviously it's going to be pretty good off-road. We'll get into a little bit more of that later, but it fits really, really well, and it's a bike that I could definitely see myself riding cross country on. Specifically about the ergonomics, it fit me like a typical KTM adventure bike, and I know I keep saying KTM when it's really Husqvarna, same difference. But everything felt very similar. You know, my 990 feels smaller than my 1290. This bike feels even smaller, but not in a bad way. Like, I feel like handlebars, you know, a little bit narrower, the body works a little bit narrower, but it fit me very well. The only knock I would have on it is I feel like on this bike, as opposed to my 990 or my 1290, I do feel like my feet are a little bit further back behind me, where they're a little bit more, we'll say, underneath of me on like the 1290 or 990. But still, overall, fit very, very well. The other thing, this is, without a doubt, the most comfortable stock seat that I've ever sat on an adventure bike. You guys know I'm usually sticking with the stock seats. This is a great stock seat. So the only other thing I would say about it, which would make it a little bit better tour worthy, now granted, it depends on what you want to do with the motorcycle. The windscreen on it is fine, but when you get up to higher speeds, it provides almost no wind protection. So that might be something you want to look into upgrading, or maybe putting a deflector or something on if you're going to be riding a lot of highway, especially if you're doing some sort of cross-country trip. But overall, and keep in mind, I'm 5'10", 32-inch inseam, bike fit me great. So what's the power feel like? Well, to be honest with you, it'd been a while since I'd been on a parallel twin. I think the last one I rode was a Ninja 650. The power delivery is a little bit different than it is on one of the big V-twin KTM bikes, especially since I'm always coming off my 990 or 1290. You don't have quite the engine braking that you're used to on those motorcycles, but it is still a really smooth power delivery. It makes plenty of power. The fact that we're even calling this a midweight, despite the fact that it's almost 900 cc's, like back in the day, a 900 cc bike was a big bore bike. Now it's a midweight bike. You know, a little over 100 horsepower. It's got more than enough, especially the fact that it is lighter than some of the other bikes I've mentioned, some of the bigger big bore bikes. It's about 100 pounds lighter than those. It will get out of its own way. It will get up and go. So getting that power back to the rear wheel, though, you do have that quick shifter, which for the most part is really awesome to have. But, and Pete noticed the same thing, between first and second, unless you're really revving the crap out of it, it's kind of notchy. It doesn't seem to rev match real well there. But in higher gears, whether you're going up or down, it does seem to rev match pretty well. But if you're riding through town, you're probably going to want to rely on the clutch a little bit more for a little bit smoother engagement than using the quick shifter. But if you're really on the throttle, quick shifter, aside from first to second, is the way to go. Now, you guys know that, you know, on most of my bikes, or at least bikes I bought new, I typically keep the stock exhaust on because I don't want a real loud motorcycle. In this case, I personally would upgrade the exhaust. This is not a great engine note, which you guys may have heard in the video earlier. it sounds like a Singer sewing machine. It's not a great noise, so you might want to think about putting an aftermarket exhaust on, or an Acro or something like that, just to make it sound a little better. I'm sure you'll get a little bit of weight, weight savings on it. Maybe not a ton of performance, but at least a better sound. Now, one thing that kind of surprised me were the brakes. You heard me talk about their J1 brakes, Husqvarna labeled. I didn't know what to think of them, but within 10 minutes of riding the bike, that was one of the first things I noticed. The brakes are outstanding, and it doesn't matter if you got it in ABS mode or you got it disabled on the rear. I will talk about off-road here a little bit. You can disable the ABS and off-road. They were great no matter what. Also, going back just to the power delivery for a second, while it is a cable actuated clutch, that clutch works really, really well. It's a really smooth pull, so while I would have liked to maybe have had a hydraulic, the cable's fine. But you will not be disappointed in the brakes. They may not say Brembo, but I'm telling you, they are top-notch quality brakes from the factory. When it comes to handling of the bike, and we're going to stick to just street right now, the handling is much like I'd expect from any KTM motorcycle, and I always called it kind of a neutral handling. And what I mean by that is, I've been on bikes before that might have a slow tip in into the corner, and then a little bit quicker tip in as you lean to more of an angle, or vice versa. It might have a quick tip in, then it slows down. The KTM is really, really linear, when you're going into corners, so you know exactly what to expect. Nothing's really going to sneak up on you. It's a really predictable steering on it. Same thing on this bike. It doesn't have an adjustable steering damper. It is a set steering damper, so that's something you may want to upgrade if you're going to be doing a lot of different riding. And what I mean by that is, you're on the street, and then you're going to go off-road, some more tunability on the steering damper. But on the street, even with these tires, so these tires are actually pretty good street tires. They're obviously not an all-out like sport bike tire, but they're good enough on the street that you can pretty much push the bike probably to your limits, if not near the bike's limits on these tires on the pavement without worrying about them cutting loose. Now, you obviously have the all the traction control, all the electronics and stuff that'll save your bacon if you do push it a little far, but I think you'll get a lot of use out of these tires, and they're tires. If you don't like the tires that come on it, that's something everybody changes around. Find the tires that are going to fit your type of riding best. So getting into the off-road a little bit, and I'll be honest, it hasn't rained around our area for the last few weeks, so everything we rode, whether it was last weekend or this weekend, was all dry, pretty much hard packed. So I haven't got to test it out in the mud, but here's what I found out that I really liked about the bike. First off, I love the fact that on the fly, I can flip it from street mode over to off-road mode, and I don't have to pull over, I don't have to stop, I can do it on the fly. I can also switch it from on-road ABS to off-road ABS on the fly without having to pull over. And that's one of the things, because we've done some adventure rides, and we got guys with all different types of bikes. Some of them have to pull over, they might have to reset their bike. You don't have to do it in this case. You can do it on the fly. That is great to have. The other thing I noticed, if you got it in a good suspension setting, like you got your clickers where you want them, you can actually get a good compliant suspension setting that works well on the road, and assuming we're not in super gnarly stuff, but maybe harder pack stuff, and off-road, don't have to worry about it bottoming out, beating you to death. You can get a nice compliant setting and just leave it all day long, which is great, because if you're on the East Coast like we are, we can't put hundreds of miles together or a couple hours together of simply off-road. We're typically going, maybe 5-10 miles off-road, and then we got to put it together with some pavement. And you don't want to constantly be clicking that stuff back and forth. So you can get a setting that's going to work for you all day long, going back and forth between the pavement and off-road. So I kind of touched on the tires earlier, how well they worked on-road. They actually work really well off-road. I don't know what Scorpion calls them. They're probably about a 50-50. So if that's going to be your riding split, I think you're going to like them. But then again, you might want Dunlops or Bridgestones or Midas, whatever it is you want to put on the bike. Find what's going to work best for you. The other thing I liked about it is I really feel like I can grip the bike extremely well, especially in the stand-up position. Like I said earlier, I'm 5'10", 32-inch inseam. I don't need bar risers. I didn't even mess where Pete's bars were. It was a really comfortable position, and I'm able to get my legs locked into the bike so I can keep a real light grip on the handlebars. And I feel like I'm better locked into this bike, maybe not than my 990, maybe about equal, but definitely better than I'm able to get locked into my 1290. And I think, Pete kind of explained it best when we were out riding last weekend. Like, I got on his bike, and within a few miles we were riding off-road. I even had Noah on the back of it, and I was hauling the mail. And it's my buddy's bike that I don't want to wad up, and I just felt so comfortable on it. And then we switched back later in the day, and, you know, Pete went flying by me, and he was like, this bike is so confidence-inspiring off-road, and I totally agree with that. I think, you know, Husqvarna, KTM, whatever you want to call it, got it right. This is a really good mix of on-road and off-road, which is what you're looking for in an adventure bike. So those are my thoughts on riding this bike for a couple of weekends. Now we're going to head back to the shop to wrap up the video. So anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on the 2022 Husqvarna Norden 901. It's a pretty awesome bike, but don't take my word for it. Go check out your local dealer. Maybe they got a demo, or maybe you can go ride an 890 to kind of get a feel for it. Obviously, check the bike out for yourself. So anyway, and no, they're not paying me to say this. I just have a Husqvarna dirt bike I've been riding the last couple of years. So I have all the gear and thought I might as well dress the part. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider hitting that subscribe button, because if you like motorcycles, this is the place to be. Also, we've got some parts in my garage, so we're going to be putting out some videos here real soon of some upgrades we're going to do to this bike. If there's anything I didn't cover, or maybe a question you have, let me know down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer it. And as always, we'll talk to you again soon.